Do you want to learn how to get healthy, perform at your best, and create body composition changes that last? In this podcast, we're going to talk about all things fitness, nutrition, health, and mindset. You're going to learn how to create real results, and most importantly, how to maintain those results in the long run. I'm your investors.
I'm Kristin
and you're listening to Talking Nutrition. What's up, guys? Welcome back. Episode 5 today, where we're going to talk about our approach to fat loss with our clients. Now, before we get into this, I kind of wanted to catch up with Kristin. We haven't talked in about 1.5 weeks now. Anyway, you recently did a Spartan race. So tell us a little bit about that.
It was super fun. So I did it with a past client of mine, Keith, who was with me for about 2.5 years. And I coached him through those from the nutrition side of things, but I had never done one, but I knew how to coach him through that. Right. But, in one of his check-ins one time, it came up about me doing one. And we're like, heck yeah, like that'd be so cool. Cause he travels all over the place to do them. And it popped up, Michigan was having one. He's like, where's Oxford? I'm like, it's like 20 minutes from my house. He's like, that's where the race is. I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So he flew in, we did the race together. I didn't really know what to expect, but I knew that I needed to up my cardio game a little bit because it's like all running plus the obstacles. So the first, like a few months out, I started to increase my cardio a little bit. And I'm glad I did because it's a weakness of mine. And that's one thing that I struggled with throughout. I didn't fail any of the obstacles. And people who know who have done Spartan race, there's the spear throw and you have to hit this target. And I got it. And I was like, no way. Like,
did you ever do that before?
Crazy. I had a little bit of practice with it at an obstacle course gym around here, but I still couldn't believe I got it. Like majority of people just don't get it. And if you fail an obstacle, you have to do 30 burpees.
Oh shit.
So
okay.
I ended up not having to do any burpees, but I did. Keith didn't get it surprisingly. So I did the burpees with him because he had waited for me on other obstacles. Because I was really just going for experience, right? I wanted to like learn how to do some of these obstacles. So I didn't rush through anything. But it was such a cool experience. It was so fun. It took me like just under an hour. But a lot of the obstacles I ended up being good at because of my CrossFit background. So it definitely translated good into the race, but I'm doing another one the end of October with another client of mine, actually, cool. Leah. Yeah. So I'm excited. I have to, like me, I don't want to be getting into anything competitive again. Like I don't want to do that to myself, to be honest with you. So I have to be careful that I don't get too competitive with this, but I love it. It's great. One of my favorite things about it was diversity of the people there. Like it was just so many different types of people, different, fitness levels, people who probably have never even worked out before and they're just getting into it and they just go through it. Like it could take one person 2 hours. It could take another person 30 minutes. Right. And it's really cool. And I really loved that about it.
That's awesome. I was wondering, like, do you feel like you kind of need that, like the competitive,
I don't feel like I need it anymore. I'm very content with where I am in that headspace now. I actually don't want to get to that point because I'm the type of person that will just take it too far. And then I'll be trying to become the best Spartan racer in the world. And like, I just don't want to do that because it'll impact my life, and I'm just at a different spot. So
I feel I'm like that with a lot of things too, where you get really excited about something and then you kind of like take it too far sometimes,
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's taking over too much. So
well, with CrossFit, when I decided like, I'm just done, I had to actually stop CrossFit for a year because I had a hard time not being competitive with it. Right. So after I stopped doing it for about a year, I then could come back and actually do it for fun and not give a crap about my score or anything. Like I did the Open a couple of years ago and just did it. And I had no pressure, wasn't trying to beat anyone. But it took me time to get to that point. Right. When you're in this like competitive mindset for so many years. So I have to be careful I don't get into that again with something else.
Yeah, I feel you.
Right.
For me, so when I quit CrossFit, this is like late 2020. Like I wasn't in competitions, but I felt very competitive, like with some of the local dudes,
Mm-hmm.
and we would always like push each other. But like realistically, I couldn't keep up with them, Like I also, like I said, I had a lot of stuff going on, building my business or starting everything. And at one point I just had to say like, hey, you know what? Like right now, like it's too much.
Yeah.
I had to quit too, like I kind of burned out a little when it comes to training. And I also, actually I haven't done it since, like I kind of switched to like a powerlifting. I think I was doing like power building for a little while. I was doing Juggernaut, I remember. And then just completely switched. So now it's been bodybuilding for a while, Maybe one day I'll get back into CrossFit, but I feel you. Like,
yeah,
I've gone through periods where I got back into CrossFit and I got really excited about it. I kind of hit a wall and then I take a break, It's happened like 3 times now. So we'll see when the next one is going to be. But
yeah. One thing that and this is like KA training too, is I do and I have CrossFit style workouts in there, but I keep them aerobic based, like around like 70-80% effort. I don't want anyone going like full blown max effort, like dying on the ground. And that way it's just way more fun and you're not killing yourself and you can still get that you can like scratch that CrossFit itch. Right. And that's what really helped me, kind of transition out and start to have fun with it again. So yeah.
Cool.
Anyways, awesome. We are getting into our approach to fat loss with clients. Obviously, like context matters. Everyone's going to be different, but we're just going to go over how we approach things and what we focus on. I don't think that we're going to be actually diving into macros. It's more so the approach, because macros and calories are going to be so individualized, right? So it's very hard for us to like dive into that. But I think I will preface this with saying that someone looking to do fat loss, when they come to me, we don't just jump directly into a cut. Like very, very, very rarely do we do that. And we talked about this a little bit before. We will see, what they're eating now, how much they're eating, where their habits are at, where's their stress at, sleep, all of those different types of things. Because if they want to lose fat, but they're under eating and they're eating like, say, 1,500 calories, 1,400 calories, like we're not going to have much room to drop down in calories without them suffering through a cut. So if someone's under eating, we'll spend time increasing those calories first so that we have a little bit more wiggle room in the deficit when we do end up going in one. But we work on the basic fundamentals of nutrition, habits. Okay. So like, first of all, consistency. That's number one. I want to see someone consistent first and foremost with their eating or what we're focusing on. Food quality, balanced meals, relationship with food, meal prepping based on their schedule, how to handle different situations. So, eating out, something like that. How do we handle that? We want to get that mastered before we go into a deficit so we don't have to worry about it when we are in a deficit, right? Sleep, stress, in general, biofeedback, right? And we focus on all of these things first because it will make that process way easier. right? Now you only have to focus on executing versus trying to focus on 10 different things at once while trying to lose fat. It's just really hard to do, right?
It's already hard to stick to sometimes, like even with those habits in place, like the deficit, it will suck basically, you know, like it's not fun, you know? And of course it's always going to depend, and we always do our best to make it as sustainable and like enjoyable as possible. But, you know, reality is it's difficult from time to time. So we want to make sure that we do have those habits in place, because I'm sure we both get this, but a lot of people come to us for coaching and kind of like tell us about what they've been trying in the past, right? And I'm sure they've done different meal plans and different coaches, whatever. And of course, everyone has a different approach, but most of the time it's kind of like, I tried this diet and this one and this one and this one, with just a focus on cutting calories, you know, whether it's super low or whatever. Now, whether they were actually in a deficit and could sustain it or not, like they've been focusing on just that and very little actual like habit building, because otherwise they probably wouldn't come to us for coaching.
Right.
Let's be honest. But like, that's why I totally agree. We first got to create that starting point, because otherwise it is going to be difficult to figure all those things out while also trying to stick to a deficit. We might be trying to even just get consistent with protein. So, you know, like we don't want to do everything at once, right? We take it step by step. That's why personally I like that, call that first phase like the preparation phase, kind of, where we either focus on building those habits and or restoring the metabolism when we need to. And I say when we need to because a lot of times people just aren't in a deficit, even though they think so, right?
Right.
That's when you hear, oh, I tried to lose weight on 1,200 calories or 14, whatever it might be, but I couldn't lose weight. Well, then you actually were not in a deficit.
Right. A lot of the time, so I posted on this yesterday, you know, they say they're at 1,200 calories, or even let's just say 1,500. And it's just unsustainable. It's too hard. They're removing all their favorite foods, and then they end up binging on the weekend. So you have 1,500 calories during the week, and then you have like 3,000, 4,000 calorie days on the weekend. Your average daily intake is actually probably like 2,500, right? So you can go and look at that infographic on my my Instagram, but that's a good representation of a lot of the time what's happening with people who come to under eating and can't lose weight. They're just kind of yo-yoing up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So I think, you know, we can jump into how we start things off. So I mentioned these things that we focus on. It's not that we're focusing on all of these things at once too. Like you're not focusing on like, blah, 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 like everything that I just listed. Like Johan said, we might be focusing on like 2, you know, it just totally depends on the person, but these things are going to lay the solid foundation for you. So when I am taking a client into a cut, I will start off with a larger decrease. Okay, so say they're at 2,200 calories, 2,300 calories, I will drop about 15 to 20% right off the bat, just to make sure that we're actually in a deficit. Because if you drop, you know, if you're at 2,300 and you drop down to 2,200, you could still be in your maintenance range, because maintenance is a range. It's not like your maintenance is 2,300. It's not a stagnant number. So I want to make sure that we're getting out of that range and we're not wasting time. So that's what I will do initially. It kind of depends next steps, like how long the fat loss phase is going to be. So I do a longer cut with a client, which is like could be 16 to 20 weeks. And then a shorter cut around 8 to 12 weeks. It could be even shorter than that. Just kind of depends. It depends on the situation that the client is in and what I use for these. And lately, I've started to use more shorter, aggressive cuts because my clients are working with me. We've built that foundation. We've improved their relationship with food. I would rather them go in and get out for spending like a long period of time. But again, I do have clients still who are on longer cuts, and that's totally fine too. So with a longer cut, I will drop that 15 to 20% usually, see what's happening in the first couple weeks. And then if they are losing weight, if they're losing like at a good rate, I will keep calories the same. So I'm always trying to keep calories as high as possible. If they're losing consistently, I'm keeping it the same. Like I've had clients where I don't adjust their macros for 10 weeks and they're just consistently losing, right? There's no reason to adjust down. We want to keep that metabolism, I guess you could say, up, and keep those calories up. Plus it's way more enjoyable to be eating more food. If someone is losing at a slower rate, I will typically adjust down. Like I will adjust usually if consistency is in place every 2 weeks.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually every 2 weeks I'll adjust. There's so many factors that play into it. It's hard to say like exactly because
you don't know. Like
I'm just giving you guys kind of like a skeleton outline of this. And usually about like 150 calorie drop every couple weeks.
Yeah, because also then you want to make sure that the drop that you make is like significant enough,
right.
Like you don't want to drop 50 calories,
Right.
Your metabolism is very adaptive. You might just move a little bit less and then that 50 calories like doesn't really move the needle anymore.
Right.
I feel like this whole process, we do it the exact same anyway, but but you're right. You don't know how long you're going to be able to get away with those calories.
Right.
But the big difference here is that compared to those low calorie diets a lot of people are coming from, we're trying to get away with as many calories as possible for as long as possible.
Right.
We're trying to kind of like work with the minimum effective dose while still sticking to like a good amount of, progress, because we don't want to keep you in a deficit forever. Instead of like rushing it and cutting calories and then again and again and being too quick. And when it comes to those adjustments throughout the cut, again, you don't know. You got people who stick to the same calories for 1-2 months and they keep losing weight. Some people have to adjust every 2 weeks, and that's just then how it's going to be. And that's okay too. So also there, like, I'd rather have you guys be patient and kind of give it another week if you're not sure, than trying to rush cutting calories, because that's really when you start to get into too low, and whether you work your way down to 1,200 or 1,000 or whatever, like at some point it's going to be very difficult to stick to. It's going to be very difficult to deal with the hunger, the low energy, etc. So you want to be aware of that. Once again, you want to get away with as many calories as possible for as long as possible.
And along the lines of that is no adjustment will make up for a lack of consistency. So if you're not consistent over a week or 2 weeks, don't adjust. Just get back to the consistency and you'll probably see things continue to progress. You have to be patient with yourself, right? With a longer cut, I do incorporate diet breaks if the client needs it. Usually we do. Usually a week where I'll bring calories back up to maintenance. Sometimes I've done 2 weeks. This is really good. It does have like physiological benefits from the standpoint of like metabolic rate, but psychologically it's really helpful for clients, just giving them a break, giving the body a break from the deficit. So I'll incorporate those. I'm a coach that doesn't like plan them right from the beginning, but I will really drive home to my clients okay, when you start to feel biofeedback is starting to decrease, or, we've got like a ton of food focus, or a lot of food focus happening, or you simply just feel like you need a break, okay, we can do a diet break, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's situations where we might need to push through that, but I will base it off of how they're doing mentally and biofeedback.
Same. Or just based on how the body responds. Because if you notice, hey, we've been lowering calories and there's not a whole lot happening, really, it might just be a good time to take a break. Mm-hmm. And personally, I take a similar approach. We don't necessarily plan for the actual diet break unless we know there's like a trip coming up.
Yeah, I was
like
just going to say that.
Week, whatever.
Yeah.
Then we do. But typically, I tell them, hey, you know what? Like, let's focus on the deficit for now. Let's keep that as a tool, kind of. But let's maybe check in with each other, 8 weeks from now. And then I'll make a note in the sheet and we know, hey, let's check by feedback. How are you feeling? Like, do you need a break? Yes or no? And I just had a diet break last week for a week and a half. For about a week and a half, I was visiting family. The first couple of days, I still stuck to my calorie deficit. I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick to it. Easy. I'm going to be tracking all eyeball stuff, but But then 2 days in, I was like, I feel like I need it. I've been cutting for a long time. It's not going to, ruin my progress because it's just going to give me a little bit of a break. And whether it's for actual physiological benefits or mental, it gave me enough energy to keep going. So now I'm feeling better again about the cut. I'm more motivated again. So yeah, like for me too, like it's nice to have that option, right? You don't have to keep cutting either, right? You can totally take a break and then continue where you need to.
I'll have clients where I'm like, okay, we're taking a diet break because I can see that they need one, but they're like, well, I don't think I need one. I'm like, we're taking one, and we do. And they're like, thank you so much for that. I definitely needed it when they were done. Yeah. They're like, so that's why it's really good to have a coach.
Totally.
I'm always adding that because it really is.
That's what we're here for,
Yeah.
That's true though. And it is important to be aware of that. And also like, have that second person like next to you, like saying, it's probably a good time,
Yeah.
And you'll probably be thankful for that too.
Yeah.
But okay, at one point we need to stop dieting, right? Either we don't respond anymore, biofeedback sucks, we're at our goal, whatever it might be, or adherence or whatever it may be. At some point we have to take a break. And I've talked to a lot of people recently about this. Like going back to maintenance, going back to eating enough is difficult. It has its own challenges. It's not easy. It sounds fun, like, oh, I get to eat more again. But at least around this time, like when I purposely take people to maintenance, I see a lot of people struggle with that. So what do you do, like once we've prepared, the client, the body, we take you through the cut, what do you do after? How do you kind of transition back? I know we talked about fat loss maintenance, etc., but in terms of habits, it's tracking, like how do you go about that, getting out of the diet?
Well, so wherever they end, I will bump them up again, kind of just taking them out of that lower range. So a higher bump up instead of like going 100 calories, like I go like 200, 300. I get them up out of it. I still take the same approach with a reverse diet. We need to be pretty accurate with that. But then once we get into the maintenance range, now we start, okay, do you want to take a break from tracking, just focus on balanced meals or tracking 3 days a week or just tracking protein and calories, just giving them a break after being in a deficit, whether it was a longer or shorter one, but regardless, we have the time to just kind of loosen.
I think especially there you need the accountability because you might see a bit of a bump up in the weight. That's okay, but it might mess with you a little, if you're not aware of like that's part of it.
Right.
weight gain, as we talked about in the earlier episode, it's not necessarily fat gain. Mm-hmm. And the adherence part, like especially during a transition, is so crucial. Like that's literally where you will either make or break your results.
Sure is. That's actually the most important place to have a coach.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I'm currently working with someone and they're about to transition from coaching to not coaching. They're like, hey, you know what? I think I'm good. I want to continue on my own, which is literally my goal. Like I want to help you reach your goal, but also teach you how to maintain your goals and to basically make sure that after working together, you're good. Like you're good without a coach, without a program, without whatever. So that's what we're going for now. However, she wants to lose more weight. Now, I don't like keeping people in a deficit. Like I don't do that. So I told her, okay, cool. I know you still want to lose weight in the future, but let's do this. Let's use this time together to transition back to maintenance. Let's make sure that we eat enough, because trust me, it's going to be quite difficult. It's going to come with its own challenges, and it's a whole new kind of chapter in your journey. Like it's so important that I really want to make sure we actually get you to maintenance.
Right.
So that you can cut in the future again. But we have to get there, because realistically, we can't always keep going down in weight. You know, we're not going to be in a deficit forever. We're not going to keep dieting. At some point, whether you get to your goal weight or not, whether it's like a longer break, 2-3 months of maintenance or longer before the next cut, we have to go there. Once again, I'm going to bring this up a lot on this podcast, but we have to go to maintenance. That's where like the magic happens, you know, like that's where you actually maintain your results.
Yeah, many people don't realize or understand that fat loss can take multiple cycles through, right? Yep. Dieting, going through a cut, reversing, maintenance, right? And that is totally fine. My clients, we go through 2. Some will take 1, some will take 2, but that's how you maintain your progress long term, right? Like if you're having to go through 2 cycles, I'd rather you go through 2 cycles of fat loss. Yeah, it's going to take longer than go through 1 that's really unsustainable, and then you risk gaining all the weight back, right? So you could do, a 12-week cut and it'd be super unsustainable and you end up risking the weight gain. Or you could do 2 cycles of a more sustainable fat loss cycle, periodization kind of thing, and actually maintain that weight because it was way more sustainable for you, or maintain that progress because it was way more sustainable for you. Right? Does that make sense?
Plus you got to build muscle. Yeah, totally.
Right. So 16 to 20 weeks with added diet breaks if needed. Then I will sometimes do shorter cuts, which I said I'm kind of leaning more towards lately. 8 to 12 weeks. These are more aggressive, but we're getting in, we're getting out. And I will do this with clients who have like really good relationship with food. They've got everything in place habitually, and they can just execute, get in, get out, get it done. I will add in refeeds like 1 or 2 days in this type of cut if needed, but that's more so for just psychological break, right? Giving them a break. It doesn't really do anything physiologically as far as like metabolic rate or anything. It's just to give them a break mentally. I personally like shorter cuts. I'm not a long cut type of person. Mentally, it's just easier for me to do a shorter cut, go a little bit more aggressive and get out. But it's really important to note that shorter cuts need to be more aggressive, obviously. And we want to have a good relationship with food if we're doing this type of thing, because if not, it can end up backfiring.
Also, once again, like being super honest with ourselves and being okay with not necessarily going with the aggressive short approach, because it sounds great. I'm going to diet for a short amount of time. I'm going to cut a lot of weight, etc. It's going to go really fast, relatively fast. But that's also where a lot of people mess up without accountability. So,
right, because they don't have the habits built.
Exactly.
That's why.
Yeah. So it's a it's a risky one, I think, depending on experience.
Right. I think the last thing I'll touch on here is about like cardio, because oftentimes that's combined with a cut. I actually won't add in cardio right away. I will actually work on increasing someone's steps first. Sometimes I don't even add cardio and just focus on steps, because steps are going to increase NEAT, which is going to help to keep metabolism high. But steps also won't increase hunger like cardio will. So cardio is going to be more stress on the system, and that can increase your hunger. And couple that with already being hungry in a deficit, sometimes it doesn't work well. But again, there are times I do add in cardio at the end, and it's not an excessive amount, right? So it's hard for me to say exactly how much, because it totally depends on the person, what they're doing, their schedule, all of that. But more times than not, I am actually not adding in cardio.
Same.
I'm focusing on steps.
Mm-hmm. Steps are huge. And we'll do a separate episode about NEAT. Mm-hmm. And I think we should do a separate one about the habits that we think everyone needs to establish, because we were going to talk about that, but I think we should probably just do a whole episode on that, because there are some habits that we could all benefit from, and that you don't have to like do every single day all the time. But if we kind of master those, we do them most of the time, regardless of muscle gain, fat loss, or health, any type of goal, everyone can benefit from those habits. So I'm not going to name them now. We'll get into that in a separate episode. But I think that's a good one to dedicate a little bit more time to.
For sure.
Cool.
All right, let's jump into ways to minimize hunger during a deficit. So first one I have here is keep protein high and make sure it's in all of your meals. So you're spacing your protein out evenly across your day, because protein is very satiating. So it's going to help to keep you full. And you'll notice if you don't have protein, like you could even try it out. Have protein in a meal and don't have it in another meal, and compare your hunger levels. You'll notice that you feel more full with the protein in every meal. But it is important to space it out.
Additional benefit to that, which is not hunger related, but it's muscle maintenance. It's very important too. We want to keep protein in for hunger, definitely, for sure. But, thinking fat loss, talked about this, we do want to make sure that the muscle we have, we hold on to as much as possible.
Right. Next one, keeping fiber in a good place. I say good place because everyone's sweet spot with fiber is a little bit different. Someone can tolerate more, someone can tolerate less. It just depends. But fiber is also very satiating. Protein and fiber, both very satiating. That kind of leads into keeping volume high. So volume, it's like high volume foods that don't have a lot of calories in them. It's going to fill a stomach, keep you nice and full. So things like veggies, fruits, right? It's going to give you a lot of volume. So if you think a protein bar that has fiber in it, protein, carbs, fat, fiber, but it's like this big versus a plate. So people who can't see me, I'm like holding out my fingers in a rectangle shape, versus a plate of food that has like a cup of veggies, chicken breast, some potatoes. What's going to keep you more full, right? So you have to think about it that way. Trying to keep that volume in your meals is going to help to keep you full longer and manage that hunger. And limiting liquid calories it's the same thing, right? Liquid calories are just not satiating at all. So that's going to help, limiting those is going to help with the managing the overall hunger.
For sure. And also, if you guys want to learn more about that, I actually did write an article about that on my website, which I'll link in the show notes. But that's all about those filling foods, right? Talking about protein, fiber, etc., but also these specific foods that can actually help you. Because, for example, watermelon you can I don't want to say unlimited, but a whole load of without really getting your calories up. And those foods, like that's the stuff you want to have, like what are you getting? Some fiber, water for the most part, and then some carbs, sure, but not that much.
Right.
So those foods, like that's the stuff you want to get, right?
Right. That kind of segues into like balanced meals, right? So protein, carb, fat, fiber at every meal. It's just going to, again, keep you full longer. The fat, the fiber, it's going to slow the gastric emptying, right? So you're going to stay full longer versus if you were just to have like a carb, you're going to be hungry pretty soon after you eat that food. So balanced meals can help a lot. Spacing meals out evenly across the day can help too, because then you're not going too long without food. Now you're like, oh no, I'm so hungry and I want everything. So it like lowers inhibitions, right? Yeah. So spacing meals out as evenly as you can across the day can help manage that blood sugar, which will play into hunger and cravings.
I also like adjusting meal frequency. For example, for me, and this is going to be personal, but typically I have 5 meals. And I brought that down to 4 simply because I can actually get some bigger meals in. That's going to keep me full. And I kind of like that too. Like I don't mind waiting a little bit longer in the morning, but if you're unsure about that too, like just play with that, right? Like see, how do you feel with 4 meals or 5 or even 6? I'd say 4 to 5 is probably best for most people, but try that. Like get your protein in, spread that evenly throughout the day, but see how you feel. Because some people do better with 5, some with 4. It's personal preference. We can't tell you what to do. But right. I think like that's one that really helped me. And I like a lot of food. At some point, with those 5 meals, I noticed like I'm not really getting like full enough from these meals. I get hungry again soon. So I brought that down and I feel way better.
Yeah, there's like a psychological part to that. Because I'm the same way. I want like a big meal, voluminous meal. And if I don't, I feel like I'm hungry really quickly after. I think a lot is psychological too, but the volume does play into it. I just like big meals, right? I would rather have 4 big meals than like 6 mini meals across the day. I'm the same way. A couple last things here is hydration. So sometimes we can confuse the symptoms of dehydration with hunger, right? So then we're more at risk of eating or over consuming our calories. So hydration's helpful with that. Also, it just helps to keep you full, right? Water in general.
Especially sparkling water.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a Zevia? You don't have Zevia over there, but
we
Zevia's
don't. I know
great.
what it is. Like I've had it in the US, but no, we don't have it. But I'm pretty big on diet sodas. I'm a fan of those, but it helps. Like that carbonation, actually keeps you full quite a bit. Yeah. So once again, I think I mentioned this already, but like diet soda gets a lot of hate. I actually got a question on Instagram about how like diet soda would spike insulin, right? Yeah. There's a lot of misconceptions about like diet sodas and stuff. They're fine. Once again, drink that stuff if it helps you. Like there's actually research to support that too. Like diet sodas can actually help you lose weight. Why is that? Not because they're magic or whatever, or they're going to burn fat. That's simply because they keep you full. And that's all we're trying to do.
Right.
Yes, we're cutting calories in the deficit, but we're trying to keep volume up and we're trying to mitigate the hunger as much as we can.
Right. Sleep, very, very, very important.
Yes.
I mean, it affects everything across our health. But with poor sleep, we often see cravings and hunger increase due to like cortisol, different things. But it's more so from like hyperpalatable foods. So meaning, foods that are really easy to overconsume, ice cream, chips, those types of things are usually what we're craving. We can see that being impacted by poor sleep. So sleep is really, really important for that. And then lastly is managing stress. So again, talking about cortisol, increased cortisol, desire for hyperpalatable foods, and we can see sugar cravings from that as well. So all of these are very. Rose is banging against us. Can you hear her?
A little. It's fine.
Yeah. All of these can really help manage hunger in a deficit. It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot you can choose from, but it will help your adherence and your consistency for sure.
Totally. Speaking of sleep, I gotta take a nap.
Yeah, he's on 3 hours of sleep, guys.
I'm running on 3 hours of sleep.
I would have not showed up today.
No, I still wanted to do it, you know?
I would have been like, I gotta go nap.
Yeah, no, like it always kind of sucks,
such a baby.
Like ending a trip, like actually being rested and then like flying like super early. Mm-hmm. Airports in Europe right now are crazy. So we were like, okay, we have our early flight. I literally got an email from the airline like, yo, be there on time. The queues there were nuts. Like longest I've ever seen, like actually, not even, over exaggerating. We made it. We were actually like still pretty early, but like it was such a mess. You know how it is at airports. It's like every man for himself.
Brutal.
Like, It was pretty brutal. But so it was only 3 hours of sleep. So we're home now. I'm actually going to take a nap, do some more work.
All right.
And I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening. If you want to help us grow the show, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or share this episode on your Instagram stories. Now, if at any point you feel like you need more help, you can always reach out to Kristin or myself directly via any of the links in our show notes, because we're here to help. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.